We are quickly approaching the opening of the free agency market in the NFL. Many of these guys will return to their team, but many will go to another team to impact their roster, hopefully in positive ways. So in this video, I'll be looking at the top 25 free agents and predicting where I think they could end up going. Hit the like and subscribe button if you're new and do go on to enjoy. Let's hop into it. So before we get into the list, I do just want to say this top 25 is from an ESPN listing that ranks the top 25 free agents. These are not my rankings, it's ESPN's rankings. We'll be giving you guys my primary destination and a secondary destination for these free agents. And we are going to begin at number 25 with Bryan Cook, and my two destinations for him will be the Washington Commanders and the Las Vegas Raiders. So Bryan Cook has been a fantastic player for the Kansas City Chiefs for many years now. Via PFF this year, he had an 83.5 overall grade with an 83.2 coverage grade and an 80.1 run defense grade. Even if you go back to 2024, he had an 82.8 run defense grade and a 63.7 overall grade. 2023, 65.2 overall grade. You get the point. This is a really quality safety out there that's only 26 years old and should have a ton of interest in the open market. While I think the Chiefs would love to have him back, they're like negative $50 million in cap space, so they're going to have to be quite picky and choosy as to who they bring back, and I just don't think they're going to bring back a safety. So when it comes to Washington, there's some talent in the safety room. Will Harris, Quan Martin. Martin really struggled in coverage this year, and Will Harris, simply put, is just an older player. Plus, I do think Dan Quinn, if he doesn't go with Caleb Downs, I do think he'll want to reinvigorate that safety room, and maybe Bryan Cook could be the catalyst of it. As for Las Vegas, they just need talent. Obviously, you do have Jeremy Chin, who can kind of move around from corner to safety, stuff like that. I think Bryan Cook is that free safety, guys. Right now, you have Isaiah Pola-Mao, who's just okay. So those would be my two destinations. Moving over to number 24, we have Kenneth Walker, and my two destinations are going back to Seattle or the Los Angeles Chargers. So I do believe he's going to be a Seattle Seahawk next year. I think he's had so much success this year, and given the fact that Zach Charbonnet is having a massive injury that could potentially hold him out for the start of next year, you're at least going to need a running back. And with Seattle having a lot of cap space this offseason and some flexibility to make some other moves, I think Kenneth Walker would be somebody they'd like to bring back, like a 3-year, $27 to $30 million deal, something along those lines. If Seattle decides not to bring him back and maybe bring a rookie running back in so they can pay other guys and be more aggressive, maybe if they were to lose a Super Bowl, which we'll see if that one ends up happening, but I think they'll bring him back. If he does hit the open market, I think the Los Angeles Chargers should be in on this one. You have Amari Hampton, who very much should be your RB1 / maybe RB2 if Kenneth Walker is that guy. But given the fact you have Mike McDaniel, who's probably going to want a bit more of a speedy back opposite of Amari Hampton, I think that could very well be Kenneth Walker if the Chargers want to be aggressive and give Justin Herbert as much help as possible on that offense. Next up at number 23, Kyle Pitts. And my two options for him are the Atlanta Falcons and the San Francisco 49ers. So it's kind of funny how it felt like for the entirety of Kyle Pitts' rookie contract and, all the years he's been there, it's always kind of been like, man, I can't wait for him to leave Atlanta. But now that they have Kevin Stefanski, I'm kind of like, if I'm Kyle Pitts, I'm returning, especially with the way he ended off the season last year with that run he went on and how productive he was late in the season with Kirk Cousins. Knowing that you have Kevin Stefanski, who has a relationship with Kirk Cousins from his time in Minnesota, if Kirk is your starting quarterback, if you're Kyle Pitts, you got to feel really good about that. It's also the fact that when you look at what Stefanski has done with tight ends, look at David Njoku, look at this year with Harold Fannin, I could see Kyle Pitts very easily fitting into that role and excelling in that position. However, if the Atlanta Falcons decide that they don't want to pay Kyle Pitts big dollars, which could make a little bit of some sense there, I think a team like San Francisco would make some sense too. If you are Kyle Pitts, you could go out there and maybe sign a 2, 3, 4-year deal. But if I'm him, I think I would like a 2 to 3-year deal with San Francisco, knowing that George Kittle is going to probably miss some time next year. And even when Kittle returns, your play style is different from George Kittle. And I think with the way that San Francisco likes to utilize their tight ends, I think Kyle Pitts could fully take advantage of, George Kittle maybe not being the George Kittle he used to be because George Kittle tore his Achilles. So I think he can get paid because San Francisco has some money, and I think his role could be a little bit better, and I think he could have a really productive year with San Francisco. Next up, we have Khalil Mack at number 22, and my two destinations for him, a return to Chicago or going to the Seattle Seahawks. So there is a good chance Khalil Mack just decides to return to Los Angeles and just kind of end his career there. But if you are Khalil Mack, to the best of my knowledge, please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think he's won a championship yet. And I think if you're looking for a team that could use a bit more depth in the edge rushing room, I think Chicago makes a ton of sense. Go back to a place that you've been at in the past. They can give you a 1 to 2 year deal, let you be the guy opposite of Sweat, and they'll probably draft somebody to work with you. I think that makes some sense. I think if you're Chicago, you want to try to go all in right now with Caleb Williams' contract. And I think if you're Khalil Mack, you probably feel pretty good that Chicago might be a spot where you could contend for a championship. And then for Seattle, like Seattle might win a championship this year. It worked out very much so with DeMarcus Lawrence. Like, why not just add even more tools to the tool shed? Now, Seattle has a couple free agents they have to bring back. We'll get through a couple of them in this video. But, I mean, if you're okay with some of these guys leaving and you just want to continue to get better on the defensive line and he wants to win a championship, I think it could check some boxes. Next up at number 21, we got Romeo Doubs. And my 2 spots for him are the Tennessee Titans or the Atlanta Falcons. So we're going to go through a number of receivers in this video, and there might be a couple overlaps here because I think the Tennessee Titans should really be in on all the receivers that we're going to talk about in this video, including Romeo Doubs. When you look at this receiving core for the Tennessee Titans, Calvin Ridley probably not going to be on the team next year. And then you're looking at some rookies, like Alec Ayomaner, Shamir Dike, obviously Gunnar Helm at tight end. They have Okonkwo as a free agent as well. We'll see what they do there. I think this team would be wise to go after one of these top receiver targets, and Romeo Doubs is definitely one of those guys. When it comes to his ability, he's a guy that can win downfield. He can win in the intermediates. He's coming off probably maybe one of his more productive seasons, and you now put him in a situation with a young quarterback in Cam Ward. He could be your number 1 receiver for a year, and even if you were to draft a Jordan Tyson or a Carnell Tate or Mekhi Lemon with your top 5 pick, you could be in a situation where Doubs is your number 2, which is kind of the same role he played at Green Bay, but he'd get even more opportunities because with Green Bay, they share the rock around with so many different guys. In Tennessee, yeah, you'd have Alec Ayomaner, you'd have Shamir Dike, you'd have Romeo Doubs and potentially another receiver, but I don't think they're going to be like all in on trying to give Shamir Dike 5 touches a game on the offensive end, right? They're going to make sure they feed their weapons, and I think Doubs very well could be there. When it goes to Atlanta, I think Atlanta just needs a number 2 receiver. Drake London is a premier outside weapon. I do believe a slot is maybe a bigger need, like almost like a Wan'Dale Robinson, but he's not in this video. Spoiler alert. They could maybe target somebody in the draft like a Jeremy Bernard or an Omar Cooper who can play a bit more in the slot. I like the idea of pairing up Drake London, who can win deep, but could do a lot of his work in the intermediate underneath stuff, with Romeo Doubs, who's just kind of, I think, a perfect Robin to Drake London's Batman. Next up at number 20, we have Isaiah Likely, and my 2 spots for him are the Washington Commanders and the Denver Broncos. So Isaiah Likely's coming off kind of a disappointing season, right? He's a top 25 free agent, but when you look at the numbers he's produced through his career, I don't really think he's lived up to that top 25 free agent mark. That all said, we all know he's a ridiculously talented player that just needs to put together a full season of being the number 1 option, and honestly, he's just staying healthy for the full seasons because he's got all the receiving talent in the world. When it comes to Washington, obviously Zach Ertz had the injury. They're also older in that room. I think Isaiah Likely with Jaden Daniels would be so much fun to watch. He's also young, so he fits the timeline of Daniels as well. And then when it comes to the Denver Broncos, they tried the Evan Ingram experiment, and it kind of worked out to a certain extent, but I think they wanted a little bit more. Likely could just kind of be the better version of Evan Ingram at this point in his career. Next up at number 19, let's talk about Devin Lloyd. And my 2 spots for him, a return to Jacksonville or the Las Vegas Raiders. So I think if you're Jacksonville, you obviously want to get better this offseason, but I think priority number 1 is to retain all the free agents you have this year in terms of like the important ones. Devin Lloyd being probably the top of the list right there. He's coming off a season where he had like 5 interceptions, was super dominant in the run game, was great in coverage. He's been really good for this football team and has gotten better year in and year out. It's hard to replace that type of production from that linebacker position. Somebody who has, I think, 9 interceptions throughout his 4 years in the NFL. That's really high level stuff. And he fits the team. He fits what you want to do. If I'm Liam Cohen, if I'm the Jacksonville Jaguars, we don't have our 1st round pick this year. So I would be kind of aggressive and just bringing back as many guys as we can while getting better in however ways we can. That's a really good roster. When you look at Jacksonville, they don't have a ton of holes. Now, when it comes to the Raiders side of things, I mean, the Raiders have been needing linebacker play for it feels like a while now, and I think Devin Lloyd would fit in right there. Obviously, give them a guy who's great in coverage, good downhill, a young player that fits their timeline. It checks some boxes, plus the Raiders have a ton of money to work with, so if they want to upgrade linebacker and give a bag to Devin Lloyd, sure, why not? Next up at number 18, we have Travis Etienne, and my two spots for him, again, a return to Jacksonville or going to the Denver Broncos. So again, I do personally believe that the Jaguars should retain as many guys as they can. That includes Etienne. Now, I will say with this one, if Etienne wants like $10+ million, if I am the Jaguars, I might be okay with him leaving because maybe you could upgrade somewhere else and then draft a running back and, be okay with that. I'm not sure what the deal is going to look like for Etienne. If I'm Jacksonville, though, I would welcome the conversation for him to come back. If he does hit the open market, I think Denver makes some sense. I also suggested Denver to go after Isaiah Likely. I think that if you were to bring in a Likely and an Etienne, your offense just gets so much more juice on that side. You have some guys in the receiving core, but it felt like the run game was just lacking something this year. Obviously, without J.K. Dobbins for a chunk of it, you were relying so heavily on R.J. Harvey. I thought R.J. looked okay this year. I thought he did some decent things. I think Etienne could maximize things a lot more. And we've seen Sean Payton have a ton of success with guys that can be used in the receiving game. Look at Alvin Kamara. I think that you're looking at somebody in Etienne who could play a very similar role to what Alvin Kamara did with Sean Payton, where he had a ton of success, obviously, with Sean Payton, that being Alvin Kamara. And again, you want to give your offense as much help as possible. You know you have an elite defense that can live up to the mark in the playoffs. Now you need to find the offensive pieces to surround Bo Nix with. You have the offensive line, you have Cortland Sutton, you have some things here and there. Let's get him a running back that can make the big 50-yard play at a snap of a finger. Next up at number 17, we have Malik Willis, and my two spots for him are the Indianapolis Colts or the New York Jets. So you could insert Pittsburgh, you could insert Arizona. They both make some sense. The reason why I went with these two teams, I guess we should start by why I eliminated Pittsburgh and Arizona. I think if you're Arizona, it doesn't make sense to go after a smaller athletic quarterback when you just had that with Kyler Murray. Why not just keep Kyler at that point? And then for Pittsburgh, I don't think that Mike McCarthy will attach himself to a shorter athletic quarterback. When you look at the guys he's worked with, Aaron Rodgers and Dak Prescott, big pocket passers with big arms. Not sure that's really what Malik Willis fits in there. I think they might just rock with Will Howard for a year. Or maybe draft Ty Simpson, who's also shorter but is a pocket passer. Which, by the way, Malik can also be a pocket passer. I just don't think he's 100% that. He's very much an athletic guy that can be a playmaker. Now, quickly on the Colts have to make a decision at quarterback. You're probably going to bring back Daniel Jones, which, spoiler alert, we'll talk about that here in a second. But if you bring him back, I mean, he's coming off a torn Achilles. You could just rock with Anthony Richardson and see if you can kind of rework that, but it kind of feels like the ship has sailed on that one, and maybe he could be dealt in the offseason. So you have to have a plan if you're not going to be able to go with Daniel Jones next year, who tore his Achilles. So I think Malik Willis could make some sense. As for the Jets, I think Aaron Glenn's in a super weird spot because they invested so much into the future, but Aaron Glenn and that team struggled mightily in their first year. If they have another bad year with bad quarterback play, I think Aaron Glenn's job could be done with. So I think he has to address quarterback in some way. Maybe that is by drafting Ty Simpson and letting him sit for a couple games. Even if they do bring in a Ty Simpson, I still think Malik Willis is in play to be the stopgap guy, kind of in the same vein as Sam Darnold with J.J. McCarthy with the Minnesota Vikings. Obviously, they could learn from that and just keep Malik Willis if he performs at a super high level. Next up at number 16, I have Jalen Watson. And for his two teams, I have the Kansas City Chiefs and the New England Patriots. So I wanted to get a little bit more cute on this one. I have a couple other corners we'll talk about here in a little bit, and I have more likely scenarios for them to land. When it comes to Jalen Watson, I think he's an interesting player, right? Obviously, kind of a homegrown guy there with Kansas City, had a lot of success there. If you're Kansas City, do you really want that guy to leave your team after he's been a really productive player? Like this year, a 69.4 coverage grade, 83.5 run defense grade, 6'2", 197, and he's just gotten better every single year with this team. Why would you let that guy leave? Unless you are going to, get outbid for him, which they could because they're in cap hell. We talked about that earlier. But I just don't know what your other options are. You're not going to get an external free agent that's probably better than Jalen Watson. You're probably not going to be in a position to draft Jermon McCoy or Mansour Delane because I think they both could go before you. So you're in a spot where I feel like bringing back Jalen Watson just makes a ton of sense. If he doesn't go back, I think the Patriots could be in on this one. Now, it's not like corner is their biggest of need because Christian Gonzalez is really good and you already have Carlton Davis, but Davis is getting a little bit older, and you got some injury problems in that secondary. I think Watson goes in there. He's a playmaker. He's a big physical guy. I think he'd fit the mold of what the Patriots want to do, while also giving them some youth. And eventually, once Carlton Davis either goes elsewhere or retires, you have your young tandem to work with for the future. So you can pay him the big bucks because you have a cheap rookie quarterback. You can still have Carlton Davis there and rotate in and out. I think he gives them some depth while also being a high-end starter in the future and being a starter for them immediately as well. Next up at number 15, let's talk about Mike Evans. And the two spots for him, a return to Tampa Bay or the Washington Commanders. Now, if I was a betting man, I would put every single dollar in my account on Mike Evans either retiring or just going back to Tampa Bay. I think he's a Buccaneer for life, and frankly, as an unbiased person here, I want him to be a Buccaneers fan or a Buccaneers player for life because I think it's just a really cool story. I think he's built such a legacy there in Tampa Bay. He's probably has a family there in Tampa Bay. It would be a little bit shocking if he left. But if he does want to leave, I do think there would be some suitors out there, one of them being Washington. Now, I do think when it comes to Washington, they would be wise to get younger, but at the same time, if I can invest a 2-year deal on a high-end outside wide receiver to maximize Jaden Daniels and his rookie deal and have a competent offense with Terry McLaurin, with Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, with my pretty good offensive line. We talked about a tight end earlier, and you have Jaden Daniels to go along with a top 10 pick that maybe could help your defense. I still think Washington has a chance to turn around quickly if they do want to turn around to, again, maximize Daniels' rookie deal. Bring in Mike Evans in for a 2-year deal. Obviously 2 years because that's eventually when Jaden will get paid. Could check some boxes. I think he's a great receiver, obviously still at a high level. Him and McLaurin, one side on the other, I think could make a ton of sense. But again, he's probably not going to leave, and I don't want him to. Next up at number 14, I have Riq Woolen, and my two spots for him, a return to Seattle or going to the Washington Commanders. I feel like we've talked about Washington a lot in this video. I guess that tells you how many needs they have, and I think we'll talk about them a bit more in the future as well, this video. But I think Riq Woolen makes so much sense to go back to Seattle to continue to do what he's doing. But going to Dan Quinn in Washington also makes a ton of sense. One of the biggest comparisons that people make to Riq Woolen is Trevon Diggs, right? These slender, long-armed, athletic corners that really thrive on creating chaos, forcing turnovers, and things like that. I mean, let's not forget, Trevon Diggs had his best years with Dan Quinn. 2021, Trevon Diggs was a menace. And you want to tell me that Riq Woolen can't look at Washington and say, they need an outside corner. They need a guy with some size, some length, some speed, with a playmaking ability. You have Mike Sainer still. Kick him on the inside. Let him play in the slot. You have Trey Amos on the outside. Riq Woolen on the other side. I think it just checks a lot of boxes. So I would be a little surprised if Riq Woolen did hit the open market and actually did kind of look around. I think he'll probably end up going back to Seattle, especially if they win a championship, just bring back the core. But if he wants to go somewhere else, maybe get paid, I think Washington could make a lot of sense. Next up, we have Quay Walker at my number 13, and my two spots for him are going to the Dallas Cowboys or the Buffalo Bills. These are two teams, man, with a lot of history, iconic names, iconic franchises that recently have not been able to get over the hump. Quay Walker makes a ton of sense to both these teams. To start off with the Dallas Cowboys, the Cowboys probably had the worst linebacker core for like 99% of the season. Overshown came back and was really good for the rest of the year, but it was him and a bunch of nobodies, right? Kenneth Murray was terrible. They tried the thing with Logan Wilson. I just don't think he fit the system. We'll see if he's on the team, right? You have a couple younger guys that are decent players, but they have their flaws and limitations. They need bodies in that linebacker room. The good news for them is they do have 2 first-round picks, and I would not be surprised if one of them is spent on a linebacker. Names like Sonny Styles, Anthony Hill, CJ Allen, maybe Jake Gaudet, if he were to fly up boards, I think make a ton of sense for Dallas to look at, especially, Sonny Styles and like Anthony Hill. But even then, even if they were to take a linebacker in the draft, I don't think they would be dumb at all to take another linebacker in free agency to improve that room, because that room was so bad last year, and Marvin Overshown can't stay healthy. When it comes to Quay Walker, he's a downhill thumper. He's somebody that thrives at getting after the quarterback, thrives at causing chaos, has improved in coverage. I think he fits exactly what Dallas needs. He's got great size, good mobility. Same thing for Buffalo, right? Buffalo's gotten a little bit older in the linebacking room. Obviously, Tremaine Edmonds left the team a few years ago. Matt Milano's getting older. He's very injury prone. You know, you have Shaq Thompson, but he's older, injury prone. And you have Terrell Bernard there too. I think Quay Walker instantly steps in, can be that downhill presence, can be the guy that can get after the run. I mean, they really struggled on outside zone this year, struggled to get after, you know, when they were able to crash down on those edge rushers, which they typically were able to do this year, the linebackers were not able to flow over the top. They were just not athletic enough or not big enough or not healthy enough. And I think Quay Walker could easily fill that role and honestly kind of free them of having to take a linebacker in this year's class and instead focus on maybe adding a weapon or adding to the defensive line / I don't know, safety room, something like that. Next up at my number 12, let's talk about Alontae Taylor. And my 2 destinations for him are the Los Angeles Rams and the Tennessee Titans. So Alontae could end up being a Saint next year. Like, that wouldn't surprise me at all if they wanted to bring him back and keep that duo of him and Kool-Aid McKinstry. But he is getting a little bit older. Like, he's one of these guys who you feel like is like 23, 22, but he's actually kind of up there in age. Not that he's ancient or anything like that, but he is 27, and by the time his deal's up, he's probably going to be like, I don't know, 28 or 29. So he's not a young player. He's not super old, but just want to throw that out there. I think the 2 destinations for this guy make a ton of sense. Los Angeles, I think they are probably going to be in the market of getting 2 to 3 corners this offseason. They have 2 first-round picks, and they have some cash to work with. I would not be surprised at all if they end up with an offseason where they brought in 2 to 3 new starting corners to completely get rid of what they had last year, which, you know, they may do with what they had last year, but it wasn't good enough, right? It just wasn't. And I think if you're going to go all in this year with Matthew Stafford probably returning, with Puka Nacua, with Adams in his last year in the deal, barring an extension, you know, as you're getting up there in age and guys are in their prime, you should go all in and bring in other guys. Alontae Taylor gives them size, good mobility. He's a really good athlete. He's a playmaker on the football. He fits exactly what they kind of need. He also has versatility to play inside and outside as well. So I think that checks out. As for the Titans, I think Tennessee probably just needs multiple guys to add to their secondary. We've seen Robert Saleh have a type with corners where he likes, you know, longer, lengthier corners. Look at Sauce Gardner. I know he had DJ Reed, but I think DJ Reed was sort of an outlier for what Saleh typically goes for. I think Saleh would like the size of Alontae Taylor and kind of let him be their future CB2 while they look to upgrade their CB1 down the road. Next up at number 11, I have John Franklin Myers, and for my 2 spots for him is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals and the San Francisco 49ers. Now, I very well could end up seeing him return to Denver. In fact, if I was Denver, I would want to bring back John Franklin Myers because he's been so good at what he does. But if they can't bring him back and if he wants to get a payday elsewhere, I think both these teams make a ton of sense. When it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals, I think they just need disruptors on the defensive line. You have some young guys off the edge, and I wouldn't be surprised they took another one this offseason, either first round or second or third or something like that. But up the middle, I think they could just use guys that can cause chaos. And that's exactly what John Franklin Myers does. He's a sound run defender, but he's somebody that can get after the quarterback from up the middle. He comes from a team in Denver that has a ton of discipline, really good pass rushing lanes. He can bring that in to Cincinnati, rebuild this defensive line a little bit, hope that Shamar Stewart takes a step forward, hope that, you know, Murphy continues to get better, bring back Joseph Osai. That defensive line with John Franklin Myers could be okay next year. And then when it comes to San Francisco, they brought in a number of guys in last year's draft. I'm talking Alfred Collins, I'm talking CJ West, but you need other bodies up there, right? When Nick Bosa went down, this was the worst pass rushing unit in football. Salah's not there anymore to help you generate pressure in other ways. You have to find a way to reinvent yourself. I think adding John Franklin Myers to give them that disruptor up the middle, because they have these big body guys. Again, Alfred Collins, he's a good player, good run defender, not much of a pass rusher right now. Bringing in somebody like what would be John Franklin Myers to be that disruptor, check some boxes. Next up at number 10, we have Braden Smith, and my 2 destinations for him, a return to Indianapolis or the Arizona Cardinals. So Indianapolis is in such a weird spot right now where it's like, you know, when healthy, they're a really good football team, but the question is always going to be, can they stay healthy? And Braden Smith has struggled with some injuries throughout his career, but when he is healthy, he's one of the better tackles out there. I think if you're Indianapolis, you're just kind of in a position where you can't really do much besides just kind of cross your fingers and hope that everyone returns fully healthy and back to their former self so they can go all in once Jones is back to potentially go for a championship. So bringing back Braden Smith makes some sense. You might also be able to get him for cheaper because of his injuries if he does hit the open market. I think Arizona should be all over this one. One healthy Braden Smith is one of the best right tackles in football. You have Paris Johnson Jr. on one side. You need that right tackle. I think Smith could very well be the guy, and it could free you up from having to take a tackle with your top 5 pick, which we've seen them commonly mocked, either a Francis or a Spencer Fano, who I think are good players, but I don't know if they're top 5 guys. You bring in a Braden Smith, now you don't have to draft and reach for a tackle at, I think it's number 3. Now you can go ahead and instead take a David Bailey, a pass rusher, Caleb Downs to add to your secondary. Like, you could add those pieces. So I think bringing in Braden Smith just kind of frees them up and gives them a really good starter at right tackle opposite of Paris Johnson Jr. Next up at number 9, we have Odafe Owe, and my 2 destinations for him are a return to the Los Angeles Chargers or going to the New Orleans Saints. So I would be pretty shocked if Odafe Owe did not return to the Chargers, because he was really productive with that team, and the Chargers have a ton of money to work with. So if they don't bring back Odafe Owe, I don't know what they're thinking with that one. He's such a good player. If he does hit the market, I think there will be a number of teams interested. I listed out the Saints because I feel like they're in a position in this year's draft, kind of like the Cardinals, where it's commonly mocked for them to go after one of those top pass rushers. But if they're in a situation where Bain and Bailey are both off the board, are you going to reach on a Keldrick Falk? Are you going to reach on a Peter Woods or a Caleb Banks? I don't know. I think adding in an Odafe Owe, letting him pair next to Chase Young, number one, gives you a lot of size and muscle off the edge, but Odafe is a really good athlete too. I would like that duo. Obviously, they're in a bit of a financial spot for this year, but next year they're pretty freed up. So if you are the Saints, you can afford a nice contract size for like an Odafe guy. Next up at number 8, we have Rasheed Walker, and my 2 spots for him, going to the rival Detroit Lions or going to the Las Vegas Raiders. So going to Detroit would be tough financially, but if the Lions could get the job done, I think they should be all over this one. You have Penei Sewell on one side, having Rasheed Walker fill in and seamlessly play that left tackle position, assuming that their starter there retires, which it sounds like he's going to do. Rasheed Walker instantly steps in there and brings the exact mentality you want to bring from this team. He's physical, really good pass protector, good blindside blocker for Jared Goff. Not sure how you're going to get that job done financially, but as we all know, money can be moved around. They can figure it out. Now, as for Las Vegas, that's the one that makes the more sense. Las Vegas is a football team that just needs to rework their offensive line. Walker instantly steps in and plays tackle for you. I know you have a couple options there, but I think you can move around the offensive line however you want, and you feel pretty good about it. Rasheed Walker, with all the money the Raiders have, he's a young player. He fits their timeline. He's just a good player. So I feel like for a team like Las Vegas, they should be all in on basically every single offensive lineman to ensure that probably Fernando Mendoza is going to be kept upright for the entirety of next year. Next up at number 7, we have Breece Hall, and my 2 spots for him are going to be the Kansas City Chiefs or the Arizona Cardinals. Now, could the Jets franchise tag him or sign him to a long-term deal? Potentially. I definitely think that is a real possibility, and in fact, I think they maybe should if he does hit the open market. I love the fits of both these teams. Obviously, Kansas City was rumored to maybe be trying to trade for him, but didn't get done, and probably end up being a good thing for them not to waste draft capital in what was a wasted season because of injury. But they need to get better in the running game, and if you don't want to spend a first-round pick on Jeremiah Love, this offseason, you're going to have some limited options out there. Could they go after Javonte Williams? Maybe. I think he fits them quite nicely. Could they go after a Kenneth Walker? Sure, I think that checks some boxes. I think Breece Hall kind of is that perfect complementary piece for what this offense might be trying to do. Him with Kareem Hunt and maybe a 5th or 4th round rookie, I think that could really reset the room and give them a nice back. When it comes to the Cardinals, James Conner, injury, older, you got to get better in that room. Breece Hall fits in immediately, is a massive upgrade for that team. Next up at number 6, we have Alec Pierce, and my 2 spots for him are surprisingly the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens. Now, could the Tennessee Titans or the Las Vegas Raiders be in on this guy? 1,000% they could, and in fact, they should. I think they fit exactly what their needs are, but we've already talked about a receiver with Romeo Doubs potentially going to Tennessee. We'll talk about another receiver here in a little bit who will have some spots to go with there as well. I think both these teams will also be in for the draft to go after receiver. I wanted to make it a little bit more interesting with this one. When it comes to Alec Pierce, I don't know if he cares about winning or not. If he does, don't go to Tennessee or Raiders because they're not going to win anytime soon. Buffalo and Baltimore are in a position where they both need big alpha X wide receivers to pair up with what they already have. Baltimore has Zay Flowers, who can play inside and outside, but doesn't have the size element. Alec Pierce has the size. He has that down the field ability. Same with Buffalo. You have Khalil Shakir. You tried it with Keon Coleman. The Keon experiment so far hasn't worked out. Obviously, maybe you could just say they're going to give it one more shot with Keon. I don't think you can do that in what is a massive year for this team. I don't know how they'll make the money work because Buffalo currently sits at -$5 million in cap space, but you restructure a couple deals, you cut a couple guys, you can bring in Alec Pierce, who's probably going to get paid a hefty bag. But his skill set, that down the field contested catch ability with Josh Allen, I mean, that would be really fun to watch. And that would make their offense really hard to guard. Next up at number 5, we have Jalen Phillips. And my 2 spots for him are the Philadelphia Eagles and the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't think it would make a ton of sense for Philadelphia to trade a pretty premium draft pick and just let him walk in free agency. He was good for them this year. I think they need an edge rusher anyways, so letting him return would make a ton of sense. If he does hit the market, though, I think Cincinnati very well could be interested in him. They need disruptors off the edge. We talked about that with John Franklin Myers. They have a little bit of cap space to work with. Right now, they have $53 million. Basically $55 million. And they have a top pick in this year's class. They can afford to go for a pretty hefty edge rusher who I think they'd be concerned about the injuries, but I think he's young enough, and with the way he looked this past year, I think they could be okay giving him a decent contract. He is a really good football player, and they just need that off the edge. They've gone for these unproven guys in the draft. I think bringing in Phillips, who when healthy is really, really good, could make some sense. Next up at number 4, we have Daniel Jones, and my 2 spots for him are a return to the Indianapolis Colts or going to the New York Jets. So my money would be all on the Colts re-signing him, probably to a 1 to 2 year deal just to see if he can return from injury. But if there's a team out there that's desperate enough to go for a quarterback and would feel the pressure to get their guy now, maybe it could be the Jets, because I don't think Arizona would feel the pressure. They're going to have a new head coach, which, by the way, we don't even know who the head coach is going to be. I don't think it'd be the Steelers because I think, again, they're probably going to rock with Will Howard. I think that the Colts are desperate enough to bring him in, and I also think the Jets would be interested in bringing him in. By the way, same exact 2 teams we talked about for Malik Willis. I wouldn't be surprised if the team that gets Malik Willis, the opposite team, will just go for Daniel Jones. I think that could be the situation here where the Jets get Willis, the Colts just bring back Daniel Jones. I think that's just probably what it'll end up being. So yeah, I don't think the Jones will leave the team, but if he does, maybe the Jets could go out there and just say, you know what, he looked really good for Indianapolis. We have some guys here and there. Let's give him, a couple games to get healthy. Let's see if he can play, and then we'll judge Aaron Glenn off of what Daniel Jones looks like. I don't know, throwing it out there. Next up at number 3, we have Tyler Linderbaum, and my 2 teams for him, a return to Baltimore or the Los Angeles Chargers. So I'd be a little surprised if Baltimore let him leave. Now, Baltimore's not in this great financial situation, but they have $20 million to work with a couple restructures, a couple cuts. They should be able to open enough money to give Tyler Linderbaum a massive contract, probably $20 million plus. But if the Ravens decide that they don't want to bring him back for whatever reason, because he's maybe the best center in football, I think the Chargers should be willing to open up the Brinks truck for this guy. Chargers have $88 million. Now they're going to have to bring back some guys, but they have a lot of money to work with. And by the way, if you want to see my mock-off season for the Chargers, where I do give them Tyler Linderbaum, check my channel. I did a mock-off season where we did that. So a lot of fun in that video. We make that team pretty good. So yeah, I think the Chargers should be in on this one. They need a center. They need to improve their interior offensive line. Tyler Linderbaum steps in there and fits exactly what this team wants to do. Physical, good pass protector, really good in the run game, high IQ guy. It just checks a lot of boxes. Next up at my number 2, we have George Pickens. And my 2 spots for him, going back to the Dallas Cowboys or going to the Tennessee Titans. So you can kind of split that Titans logo with the Titans / Las Vegas. Maybe I should have photoshopped it, but that would have taken a lot of work. Yeah, so I think Cowboys, Titans, Raiders, just kind of throwing a third team at you there. All 3 of those teams need a receiver. When you look at Dallas, he had a ton of success with them last year. I would see a world where Dallas franchise tags him and tries to work on an extension throughout the offseason, see if they can come to terms with a deal that's met in the middle. I think he's probably going to be playing in Dallas again next year because he was really good with their team last year. Him and CeeDee Lamb with Dak Prescott and Javonte, I don't think you messed that up. That offense was a top 5 unit last year. It's a shame they had the worst defense in football because they would have been a playoff team. So if you're Dallas, you should be able to restructure a ton of deals, open up some money, bring back Pickens on a long-term deal. If Dallas decides we just don't have the financial situation to do this, we would love to have you back, but you're not meeting our contract needs. Maybe they franchise him and trade him. I don't know if that you can do that. Maybe you extend him and then trade him to get off the deal. I don't know. Maybe Dallas could do that. Not sure they should because he's really good, but just throwing that idea out there. If he does hit the open market, I mean, George Pickens in Tennessee with Cam Ward would make a lot of sense. If you're Pickens, maybe you just want to cash out and get the highest paid contract in the NFL. Tennessee has $100 million to work with. I wouldn't be surprised if Tennessee sees George Pickens and says, sure, we'll pay you Justin Jefferson money because we need you on our team. Even though you're not as good as Jefferson, we need you that damn badly. And then long term, more money will open up in the salary cap to where the deal, by the time the deal is done, he's no longer the highest paid receiver. So maybe it could make some sense in that perspective. Same with Las Vegas. I don't know if his personality would mesh well with Fernando, but I feel like the Pickens' personality issues have been kind of dealt with. He's been really good in Dallas, so I think in Las Vegas he'd be fine. And again, kind of the same scenario there. Las Vegas has $89 million to work with. Sure, George, you want to play with Fernando Mendoza? We'll give you $50 million. Why not? I really would not be surprised if you see a team do that. And lastly, at number 1, we have Trey Hendrickson. And my 2 destinations for him are the San Francisco 49ers or the Carolina Panthers. I also did consider the Buffalo Bills for this one because they could use his style, but I don't know, maybe just bring back Joey Bosa and feel okay about that one. But, just want to throw that one out there. I think that there would be a number of teams interested in Trey Hendrickson. He is older. I don't know if he's going to be getting paid $30-40 million. I think at most 30, probably more like 25, 28, maybe 32 at best. But I think there would be a lot of suitors for him. Obviously, San Francisco's in a position where they're in a weird position, by the way, because they have to kind of go all in. They do have this youngerish quarterback. I wouldn't say he's young. He's like middle-aged, but he's younger. But you look at Trent Williams, how many more years does he have? You look at George Kittle, how many more years does he have? You look at Christian McCaffrey, how many more years does he have? Fred Warner's a bit up there now. Nick Bosa's in the middle of his prime. You have a team now that is ready to win. And they're good. We've seen that this year. Now, you lose Salah. That stinks. Hopefully, you find a decent enough replacement to do what he did. But you have the head coach. You have the quarterback. When healthy, you have the pieces. You have to go all in. Bringing in Trey Hendrickson to pair opposite of Nick Bosa while also building along with Micah Williams would allow you in the draft to then focus on maybe adding a guard or adding a tackle or adding a receiver because they need those things on the offensive end. When healthy, this team could be great. Adding in a Hendrickson maybe allows you to be okay if Bosa has to miss some time because Hendrickson is an elite pass rusher, and a duo of Hendrickson and Bosa, when healthy, is really good. Now, I think there would be some Niners fans that say, great, we're going to go after a guy who's coming off an injury-riddled season. Sure, I guess, but Hendrickson has been healthy for most of his career, so I wouldn't be too concerned about it. I think you'd be fine. As for the Carolina Panthers, I think that they're in a situation too where I feel like it's kind of put up or shut up. They have to start making playoff games and not just making them, but winning playoff games. You've taken a step each year. Next year, there's going to be expectations, right? Next year, there are expectations to not just be that scrappy, fun team that wins one, loses one, wins one, loses one, and scraps their way to the playoffs. This is a team that now has to make the playoffs next year, or else there could be some firings and some questions at the quarterback position. So how do you do that? You go all in this offseason by going after a pass rusher like Trey Hendrickson, letting him work with Nick Scorton and Derek Brown, Tershawn Horton, and all those guys, drafting a linebacker, adding more to your offense. I think Hendrickson checks a lot of boxes there. They just weren't able to get after the quarterback as much as you would like. Adding in Hendrickson gives them that disruptor who helps them maximize their window right now. I mean, look, their window's wide open, obviously, because they're a young football team. Not saying their window's like this near or anything like that. But with Canales, like Canales has to make the playoffs next year. It has to improve this team, or else he's probably gone, right? Maybe even the same for Bryce Young. Pressure on both those guys. I think you go and be a bit more aggressive this offseason, restructure some deals, go after some big names. Hendrickson could very well be that big name. But guys, bit of a longer video. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. If there's a free agent I did miss, please let me know in the comment section below, and I'll definitely give you some ideas as to where they could go. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button if you're new and enjoyed, and I love you guys. Peace.